Greetings and welcome to this edition of Campus Conversations. I'm Dan Mogula from the university's Office of Communications and Public Affairs. Today, we get to meet one of our newer deans who is leading a new groundbreaking campus division. Jennifer Chayes, and stand by, this is quite a title, is Associate Provost of Computing, Data Science and Society, CDSS, and Dean of the School of Information. Before coming to campus, for 23 years, she was at Microsoft Research, where she founded and led 3 interdisciplinary labs. Chayes has received numerous awards for both leadership and scientific contributions, including the John Van Neumann Award of the Society for Industrial and Applied Mathematics, which is the highest honor in the field of applied mathematics. Jennifer is also a member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the National Academy of Sciences. Her research areas include phase transitions in computer science, structural and dynamical properties of networks, including graph algorithms, and methods for machine learning of large-scale networks. And if that doesn't create some feelings of insufficiency among you, I'm not sure what will. Her recent machine learning work includes applications in cancer immunotherapy, ethical decision-making, and climate change. As always, we welcome your questions as we go along. And so, please feel free to post any and all of your queries for Jennifer on our Facebook live streaming site. Jennifer, welcome to Campus Conversations.
Thank you, Dan. I'm really happy to be here. I know due to the pandemic, it took a little while to get me here, but I'm thrilled to finally be here.
Yeah, so remind me, when exactly did you start? When did you come to campus?
I started a year ago. I started in January of 2020.
Good timing. And so I want to just do some basic questions here. What is data science? Is it a fancy name for math? Is it just another way of talking about computing? But when we talk about data science, we talk about big data. What are we talking about?
So data science is really the bringing together of statistics and computer science and information. So those are actually the 3 parts of our division. We have the School of Information, we have the Department of Statistics, and we share EECS, Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, with the College of Engineering. So it's the bringing together of those disciplines with essentially all the other parts of campus to ask the right questions, find the data that can address those questions, and try to make good predictions. But it is also, or should also be, the reflection of those other disciplines on the core of computing and statistics and information. So it's really a two-way street. To give you just a little understanding of what it is, in our data science major, students do 4 things. They do computing, they do statistics, they do human context and ethics, which is really important, and then they do a designated emphasis. And we have 25 of them, jointly with all the other schools and colleges on campus.
I got it. So the university stood up. It was quite a big step at the time, a brand new division. That's the Division of Computing, Data Science and Society. And so what is that? Why was a new division formed? And for people who come across that name for the first time, how do you explain to them what it is and what its purpose is?
Okay, so a lot of universities have done institutes of data science, which is kind of, just convening people from all these disciplines. But let's think about where we are right now in this world, okay? What has happened is that computing and statistics are, in many senses, forming the basis of our means of communication. We're in the age of communication in computing. There have been 3 ages: simulation, communication, and we're heading towards the age of interaction. So what does that mean for us as members of society right now? Well, it means that in the pandemic, for example, we have been able to, those of us who are lucky enough to be white collar workers, have been able to carry on much of what we always did via the web. We're able to, teach our classes and do our staff work and organize, and get groceries delivered and have our doctor's appointments over the web. So that's a great thing about the age of communication. But, this was built without having an ethical framework. So what has happened is that also in this age of communication, we see unintentional bias sneak in all kinds of ways. So the ways that the distribution of resources is rolled out is biased because we didn't think about how it might not be. So that was an unintentional consequence of just building algorithms without being conscious of how they might be used. There is also, this became a very powerful medium. And what happens when you have something very powerful is there is often intentional subversion of that power. And, we have all just lived through an insurrection where the subversion really took place over this powerful medium. So as we go into more and more of our public systems, our criminal justice system, our health system, our education system, our social welfare system being mediated by computing, we really need to have computing also at the core of this new division so that we can ensure that as it becomes the fabric of our society, it is a fabric that, that will serve its purpose properly. And Berkeley is more than any place else positioned to do this. So it's really a wonderful opportunity. There is no place in the world like Berkeley to really lead in this area.
So if I understand correctly, I hear you saying that sort of data and computing has permeated every aspect of society. And it does seem, and I'm wondering what you think, that you open up the paper these days and the news is more data heavy than ever, about infection rate and the R-naught and the efficacy of vaccines and economic data. Do you think that we are as a society right now data illiterate? And if so, how is your division going to help address that?
Well, we're not quite data illiterate, but, data, as you say, it's everywhere. And so, it is becoming, being able to take in this data, to question where it's from, to question its foundations, is as important to being a member of civil society as being able to, read or to write. It's really becoming that fundamental, and as fundamental as very basic mathematics, because for us to be able to do what we need to do in this world, we are making choices where we're told data tells us X, Y, or Z. And, we have to inoculate against misinformation, because anybody can say data tells me X, Y, and Z when it's actually untrue, by being able to think critically about data. So I hope that every day, that, someday soon, everyone on campus will have the opportunity to take at least a basic data science course. You don't have to become a data scientist, but we want to empower our students to be able to navigate this data-driven world that they're in.
So you seem to be making a case and a pretty strong argument that familiarity and comfort, intellectual comfort with data science skills is essential for people in the humanities, the arts, everything. Am I overblowing that?
You're not overblowing that. I think it's important for people in the humanities and the arts, but I also think it's really important that people in the humanities and arts are informing the way we build these computing systems. that the people who are in philosophy, the people who do interpretive social sciences, not just the data-driven ones, the people in the arts, inform this so that what we build will be not only more beautiful and more inclusive, but it will enable us to increase the positives of having this fabric of computing and decrease the negative. So yes, I think it's important as a form of literacy, but I also think that there is a two-way street, that it's not just data science telling somebody in the humanities, what to do. I think it's also someone in the humanities telling us as we build this technology what we should do.
We're going to come back to all this. I want to pivot to some more personal stuff, up close and personal stuff, because this is part of a Meet the New Deans series. But before I pivot to that, I just want to remind everyone that we welcome your questions as we go along. Feel free to post your queries to our Facebook live streaming site. So back to you. Look, you had a distinguished career at a global company, Microsoft, a company that touches the lives of billions of people. What compelled you to join Berkeley? What compelled you to enter the rip-roaring world of academia?
Well, I should say I was a professor for 10 or 12 years at UCLA before going to Microsoft. And what I built at Microsoft was very academically oriented. I've worked with probably 200 grad students and postdocs over the past 23 years at Microsoft. So I've kept very much in touch with academia. And here and at many other universities, you will find students I worked with over the years who are now leaders because it's been a while. So, I have like great-grandchildren, maybe even great-great-grandchildren academically, But you're right that there are certain kinds of impacts that I could have at a global company, at a company that served billions of people. So why come here? And the reason that I came here is that, let me just shut that off, which is blinking at me and not a good thing.
I just want to say, it is so encouraging and comforting to me that the head of our Division of Computing Data Sciences Society also has to wrestle with her computer during a live event. Thank you for making us feel better.
Okay, well, thank you for making me feel better about that. But, so why did I come here? Well, I was starting there to do things in, as you mentioned, biomedicine and ethical decision-making and climate and sustainability. But, there was only so much I could, from here, the scale that we have at Berkeley is just incredible. I've heard a figure, not quite verified yet, that of our 1,500 faculty members, 400 of them have said they either have worked in climate and sustainability or want to work in climate and sustainability. And climate and sustainability is not just the science of new materials and environmental science. It is those things, but it is also the economic factors that contribute to whether we are going to be able to switch to new energy sources. It is the human aspects of it. It is the human perspective. Max Alfhammer, who is in CNR and in the social sciences, says that Bangladesh is where climate change shakes hands with nuclear war, due to the displacement of people due to climate change and the geopolitical destabilization of that. So there are so many aspects of the problem of climate change, for example. Bill Collins, who is in Earth and Planetary Sciences and up at LBNL, is working on the latest IPCC report. These are the big reports that come out every few years on climate change. And he says the most unknown factor there is the human factor, right? We understand some of the science, but this is a really complex system. So, Berkeley is the ideal place to look at problems like climate and sustainability, biomedicine and health and human welfare and social justice. We have the scale, we have the people. Also through our data science major here, as we put this into our curriculum, our data science major or courses in the major have been adopted by or are being seriously considered by hundreds of universities and colleges and even two-year colleges across the country. So it is a way of scaling this to really to bring what Berkeley, Berkeley's best to these urgent societal problems, and also to scale it beyond Berkeley.
And you say that because your assessment and belief and conviction is that data science is an inherent part of all these societal challenges?
It is an absolutely inherent part of all of these societal challenges. Let me give you an example, and
Please.
aha that I got when I got here. I talked to our Dean of Law, Erwin Chemerinsky, and he directed me to a couple of faculty members, Andrea Roth and Rebecca Weissler. They do criminal justice, and they were looking at the effects of algorithms on criminal justice. So what I heard from Rebecca Weissler is that she's working on the appeal of a case right now where somebody is on death row. They were convicted of a capital offense based on the output of an algorithm that was so I hadn't realized this before Rebecca told me. Yes, we know algorithms are used to decide who gets a loan and this and that. The output of algorithms is used to convict people and put them on death row. And it was being used outside of its domain of validity. So I put her together with Rediat Abebe, who is a brand new faculty member here in EECS, whose work is around computing and social justice. And they are finding ways to challenge that software. They are challenging that software, and they've put in a request to take it to the Supreme Court, where Erwin would be the attorney of record. But okay, so we have the resources to do that here. But is that enough? Is that enough? So we are also working with Fernando Perez, who is in our statistics department. Fernando was just recognized this past week by Nature magazine, which is like the top magazine in science. They named the 10 top computing codes that have transformed science forever. They went back to 57. Fernando's was one of the 10. As a grad student, he developed IPython. He brought it here to Berkeley and co-developed iJupyter, which is a platform for science. But we're Berkeley. So for science, it's amazing. Chan Zuckerberg, supports it for open biology. And we're talking with Schmidt Futures about open climate science. Why not open public defense? So we are now talking about building a platform where the results of this kind of analysis that Rediat and Rebecca and Andrea are doing can be made available to public defenders everywhere in the world. There's a market imbalance in criminal justice. Prosecutors, and this is from Rebecca Weissler, but I found it really compelling. Prosecutors are told to find evidence of guilt, and defenders are told to find evidence of innocence. Well, unfortunately, all the resources are going to the prosecutors. So there's a market failure there. So can we create a distributed platform that would address that market failure and empower public defenders who know nothing about computing? So we would build a front end with very fuzzy logic that anybody who knows nothing about computing could query with their case to find things to help them defend people who are accused of crimes. So that's the Berkeley ethos. There are societal problems, and we bring together the technical people and the people who are excellent in all other disciplines to enable reform on a grand scale, a really grand scale.
So you've brought up the issue a couple of times in different ways. We've talked about equity, and I'm wondering about the field of data science itself. I mean, we've read stories about how facial recognition technology fails or has a high error rate with Black people. We also read about the shortage or the paucity of women and people of color in the field of data science, in the field of computing. How are you hoping, or how are you already addressing those challenges regarding that human connection, both in terms of those who are practitioners or who are academics in the field, or those who have been victimized or damaged by some inherent inequities or disparities within the science itself?
So, it's interesting because those two are very related. As we bring in more
Did you say belated or related?
related.
Okay, sorry.
There's a causal error, actually, because we have so few women and people of color among the practitioners. We tend to design things where we're not aware, we're not cognizant of the pitfalls. Okay, so that first study that was done on facial recognition and that was being used by police forces, not recognizing Black people properly, actually came out of one of my Microsoft labs and MIT. Timnit Gebru, whom you've heard a lot about on the news maybe, with the whole Google business, was a postdoc in my lab, and she was working with Joy Pulwani at MIT, and they came up with that. And so, what did we do? Well, as Microsoft, we went to the CEO and we decided to stop using that software in working with police for a while. This is a really important field. Also, here at Berkeley, the woman I just mentioned to you who just started as a computer scientist is Rediat Abebe. She is African. She is the first Black woman in the EECS department. And she is acutely aware of all of these things. We need women, we need Blacks, we need Latinx and Indigenous people building this fabric, because they will understand in ways different from the majority how this may be used. So this is a huge area for us. Fairness, privacy. I mean, I myself won an award for a debiasing algorithm, which debiased gender and, which debiased with respect to gender and race for hiring. So it's a very, very important area to me. We have a lot of scholars in this area. We have Rediat Abebe and Moritz Hart and Mika Hablatab and my husband, Christian Borgs, and I in EECS. We have Deirdre Mulligan and Jenna Burrell in the iSchool. So this is such an important area, and Berkeley is already viewed as a real leader in this area.
Right. So you make a powerful case for the importance of diversity among the practitioners, and that could translate and should translate into a more equitable, more inclusive sort of data science and its applications. I think that the question remains, how are you going to do that? You've made a powerful case for what we need, and we need greater diversity, but what programs, plans, initiatives, or thoughts you have to increase the diversity of your student body and the faculty in your division?
Okay. I am personally approaching many diverse scholars I know and trying to convince them to come here. I worked on Rediat really hard. She was one of my mentees. By the way, she and Timnit Gebru co-founded the organization Black in AI, when they were at my lab together as a postdoc and an intern. There are, 1,000 Blacks in Black and AI. This is a huge worldwide organization. There is no real paucity of talent. There's how do we connect with that talent? This year, we are being extremely careful to try to admit a more diverse class to graduate school in EECS. We're really going to change we are going to change the racial makeup. Also, data science is a field that tends to attract those who were not in some way preordained to become computer scientists. If you get admitted to the EECS major from high school, and it's very, very, very hard to transfer in. We have a letters and sciences CS major with a very strict grade point cap. So even if you discover this, you may be, if you came from a family in a high school that wasn't always talking about computing, you may be at a disadvantage before you get up to speed. It can impact your grade point. And so data science is an uncapped major at this time. And it is something which attracts a more disciplinarily and demographically diverse group of students. It attracts students who wanted to do something else with their lives. And they come in and they take our intro class and they realize they have an aptitude and an affinity for data. And it's not that they're all going to go and work for the tech industry. Some of them will, and that's great because we could use a more diverse tech industry. But they're also going to go into other areas like what Eric Schmidt and Darren Walker. Darren Walker is the head of the Ford Foundation. He's a wonderful man. He talks about public interest technology. And so Eric and Darren say we need 500,000 data scientists, which they call public interest technologists, in government positions. So kids who come in thinking, well, I want to do some policy, or I want to do economics, or I want to do social work, or they can find, my Lord, another one. They can find that they can do those things and become the new data-driven leaders of that field. And I think this is another way in which Berkeley, we bring in, unlike the other places that are tops in the world in computing, we bring in a cross-section of the students of California, which is a leading cross-section of society because California is ahead of the rest of the United States this way. And so if we could create this more demographically and disciplinarily diverse group of leaders, and then help other schools that come to us for our model of data science to also start these programs. We're talking to several historically Black colleges and universities about starting programs with them. Maybe, a 3+2 or 4+1 master's program with some historically Black colleges and universities. Also with UMBC, which is the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, which was a commuter school known for producing an incredible number of Black leaders. So we are talking with those schools about partnering with them. It is, if we are to fulfill our society mission in CDSS, it must be, we must have the leaders of this field reflect the population.
Great. I mean, really, it's inspiring to hear the extent to which you're walking the walk and talking the talk, as they say. I've got loads of other of my own questions, but we're getting some really good questions coming in from people who are watching. I want to toss some of those your way. The first one is, how do you see qualitative data fitting into data science? You mentioned the role of the interpretive social sciences in helping to shape computing, but that still puts quantitative data at the center. And in your answer, if you could just take into account that for a lot of us are probably scratching our heads going, qualitative data, quantitative data. So help contextualize your answer.
So, I think that one of the problems with a lot of data science is that it starts with numbers. Okay. It starts with numbers, data, conventional data, quantitative data that can be misinterpreted. Some of my favorite work in data science starts with what's called qualitative data, like in anthropology. So, for example, when I was at Microsoft, we had an anthropologist, Mary Gray, who wanted to study the online workers in the gig community. Okay. She wanted to interview people who were on Amazon Turk. She went to India for 9 months and she interviewed tons and tons of people. She came back and she said, wow, they have a network in the background. Everybody said, that's not true. We just connect with them individually. And so she started working with a computational social scientist, someone trained in machine learning. And they went and they monitored what was happening in the background. And they realized that this was true. And this enabled, so they understood it in a way that never would have been realized without the anthropological data. Mary just won a MacArthur Award for this. She's testified before Congress. This is the marriage we want to have here. We need this marriage of the qualitative and the quantitative.
So just help me out though. What's the difference? What are qualitative data?
Qualitative doesn't have numbers. Okay. Qualitative is if I interview a bunch of people and I find out things that they care about, that really informs the way I would question. So let me give you an example closer to home.
Sure.
The city of San Francisco implemented school choice. Okay. Lots of people know about school choice. Kids can get matched with different magnet schools.
Sure.
Right? So people who are parents to kids in high school know about these magnet schools. It was designed purely quantitatively with quantitative data to try to give the best matches. Of course, what the city of San Francisco hoped was that it would lead to a more equitable distribution of resources. It would lead to more integration of the schools. Unfortunately, it had the opposite effect. And so they stopped it. One of our researchers in the School of Information, Nilafar Salehi, went in and she started interviewing parents and trying to understand how they were reacting to this form they got that was based on, with instructions, which was based on algorithms just using the data. And she found all the ways that this could go wrong. So she's working with someone in the Graduate School of Education to come up for our Oakland schools with a new method of doing school choice, which takes that into account. So if you just start with the numbers, you can often be misled. You need people who really understand human beings from talking to them, working with them. This is another thing that Berkeley really could have such an edge in. We train so many of the public health workers in the state of California, the public school teachers, the social workers. Okay, these are our alum. Now, instead of just coming up with, here are some great data solutions, without working with the disciplinarians and understanding the problems, we can actually come up with solutions, in quotes, which exacerbate rather than mitigate problems. So I have been talking with faculty in the School of Public Health, the Graduate School of Education, the School of Social Welfare, about how we do this qualitative work that will underpin later quantitative work, making sure it's just because it's numbers, it doesn't mean it's right. Okay, but we have people here in all these disciplines who can work, qualitative and quantitative people to make sure that we as Berkeley get it right and we show the world how to get it right.
Fascinating. Next question. And I'm just reading here. My concern is with all the messaging apps that have a lack of encryption. I am concerned that the government will do questionable things with my data, but more concerned that the app developers are selling off our information for known purposes like commerce, but also for unknown and worrisome purposes. Can you speak on this topic in terms of what can we, the average social app users, be wary of and should be wary of?
Okay, this person really understands, and you should be wary of it all, honestly. You should be very, very careful. The things you put there, I mean, I had a boss at Microsoft who always said, don't put anything on social media, don't click anything, don't do anything that you don't want appearing on the front page of the New York Times, or you don't want sent or used in some way. And so, yes, you should be wary. We have some of the top people in the world in privacy and in security who are working on this. But it was also, it was a failure when all this was designed. It was a failure to understand how it might be used. Okay, these apps and our search engines, everything, are built on a free, on a free basis where they are monetized by commercial and maybe other users. Okay, corporations that want to sell you something, or who knows what, right? Or political groups that want to send a message to you, they buy ads. What we need to do right now is we need to figure out how to fix some of these. And there are some technical solutions, but really, Larry Lessig, the lawyer, talks about 3 kinds of solutions: technical, regulatory, so laws, and normative, social norms. And I think that Berkeley is in a wonderful position to speak to all 3 of these. And we need to hope that the kinds of research that we do can inform regulation. Because what happens sometimes is that something goes badly wrong. And then there is knee-jerk regulation, which doesn't really get to the heart of the problem. So the more we can have working with people in ethics, in the law school, in the domains in which this is going to be used, the more we can work with them, the better it is. And just to make clear, right now we're in the age of communications. Just imagine if all of your healthcare came out through what are basically apps, okay? If the criminal justice system is working on a computing platform, if whether you get loans or not is on a computing platform, just everything. We are moving into the age of interaction, where it won't just be interaction with the Internet of Things, self-driving cars, sensors. It will be interaction with all of our social systems will be mediated by computing. So, and we're moving in that direction. There is no way to stop it. The systems be great equalizers for redistribution of resources, or it could be disastrous. And this is why it is so important to be forming this division now, to bring together people as we start to build this fabric, so that what we're experiencing in social media, you won't experience as you're trying to get healthcare, or you're trying to get your education, or someone is administering justice to you.
Wow, it's the number of layers. Here's another one coming for you. There's no easy questions in your field, but I'm sure you're used to that. This person asked for your thoughts on how to make sure that release data doesn't get altered by evil forces, they say. But I want to actually add to that. If we sort of elevate data to, data is king, we must have data. how do we make sure that the data we're seeing and then we're using, we're being influenced by, is legitimate and has integrity? In other words, there's studies that show that if I use numbers in a presentation, people are 93% more likely to believe me. Well, I just made that number up, right? But, and as soon as you use those numbers, 93% and 20,000 data points, well, 20,000 out of how many? 93% of who? How do we get down to that next level to have confidence that the data that we have elevated to this powerful role, to this level of importance, is legitimate, was equitably gathered, and has integrity?
So this is a huge problem. It's one of the reasons that people should take data science, because they will then realize that everybody that, Dan Mogulof can just make up this fact. They will question every figure they hear. When I read something on my Facebook feed, I immediately look and try to see where it came from. Was it a trusted source? Was it the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal? Was it an organization that has an incentive to maintain its role as an authority? So I think this is a big part of it too. What are the incentives that we have, right? And you should always, when you get data, you should think, what were the incentives in the creation of that data? So that is something that you learn to think about. Always think about market incentives or other kinds of incentives as you read data. Now, there are efforts to try to gather good facts and make them available. Steve Ballmer, who was the CEO for a while of Microsoft, and he owns a basketball team now down in LA.
Oh, who doesn't?
Who doesn't? He started an organization called USA Facts. USA Facts. You can find it on the web. And there he makes a lot of government data publicly accessible. So that's a place where you go to find some trusted data. Okay. And we should be building platforms. And again, I keep coming back to Fernando Perez, who is just a jewel. He is on this campus and he created Jupyter. And, we can try to create platforms that have trusted data on them. We can try to create platforms where we need security. Okay. When we need security on certain platforms, we may have to build them with metadata so that we understand who came in, who used them, who modified them. So all that gets recorded. So that's called metadata associated with the data. And so there are ways of dealing with this, but we really, it's all been done in a very haphazard fashion. And it is time to build a society where we have access to trustworthy data and we use it in trustworthy ways. And that is really the opportunity that we have. But I want to come back to the humanist and the interpretive social scientist. We need to work with the disciplinarians, the people on the ground, because if you are not really in a field, you can deceive yourself with the data. So this is also why CDSS wants to have joint faculty with people all over campus and with UCSF. We're just in the process of trying to hire joint faculty member with UCSF for computational precision health, which needs, in this new PhD program we want to build with UCSF, one of the hallmarks of it will be healthcare equity. So, these are the kinds of things that society urgently needs, and Berkeley can and is assuming the mantle here in doing this.
Got it. So let's come down for a second from that 30-foot, which is fascinating, the 30,000-foot level of data science and societal issues and needs. Talk a little bit more about the division itself. Now, my understanding is that you guys received sort of an unprecedented gift of $250 million, an anchor gift that's going to help build a home for your new division. How is the new building, the new facility, how's that going to help you achieve your goals? How important is that to you and to your community of students, staff, and faculty?
Well, first of all, The lead donor is an amazing human being who believes in the future of the students of the state of California. That is what drives this donor. Okay, the donor really cares about the students of the state of California, particular cross-section of the students. So it was creating this home that is going to lead to these fields which produce a demographically and disciplinarily diverse group of leaders that motivated this donor. Now, in order for new fields to happen, there is, and I think all of us are a little sick of sitting in our own homes, but people really need to mix with each other. It's something that I learned at Microsoft. I tried to have as flat organizations as possible with philosophers, anthropologists, and biologists, and physicists, and mathematicians, and computer scientists, and lawyers coming together and talking with each other. And, there is nothing that substitutes for that casual interaction where, it's not just learning the language of another discipline. What, can I go in and learn the language of biology if I'm willing to spend years? Probably yes. If I'm not, probably no. And the same with computing. But it's not just the language. It is really understanding what are the important problems of other disciplines and why. I think that we need to develop more disciplinary respect, mutual respect. Those of us in technical fields sometimes think we come up with a little model and it answers the real world questions. And some people who are doing things, that are not technical, like what's the matter with these technical people? I don't understand why they don't do this better thing. And so it is by understanding working with people in education and understanding how a parent who doesn't have much education herself is thinking about the school choice for her daughter. And why is that important? You need to do that before you do these other solutions. And this is not the kind of thing you get by, being told, oh, you just, you just come together for some little workshop for a day or two. It is what you get when you sit and you break bread and you have casual conversations and you talk about your family and you talk about what you care about. You begin to understand. And so this is going to be a very different kind of building. And by the way, I really do know about this, like the field of fairness, accountability, transparency, and ethics in AI, FATE in AI, came out of one of my labs. Okay, the field of a certain branch of quantum computing came out of one. So it is real, but these things happen over years, okay, over years. So this building is going to have a lot of, the offices will be quite small. There will be cubes and things as well, but there's going to be convening space where we build community that begins to understand each other and build these fields. And I want to say something else as well. I think that, yes, faculty will have offices because faculty must have offices or they go elsewhere. But beyond that, we really want to break down hierarchy in this division. I think that some of the staff are the people who are most forward thinking as we plan this. And I think that we are really the university is faculty, staff, and students. And we need to build these things together. It's not just, if we're going to have real impact on society, we need to build these things together. So the building is going to have convening space that is not just, it's convening space for the community of faculty, staff, and students who are working on these problems and trying to nurture these new fields.
So how are you going to do that? How, for example, would a staff member who's watching today who's part of your division, how will they be involved and how will they have a meaningful role in the evolution, the future evolution and the ongoing evolution of your division?
Well, the wonderful thing about starting something new is you can build it better. We really want to be a values-driven, or we need to think about culture. Okay. Mm-hmm. And for culture, you need to think about values.
Right.
And so we are a values-driven organization. And, our most important value is inclusivity. Demographically, but also disciplinarily, and also in terms of role. Mm-hmm. And, my EA, Rebecca Ulrich, is helping to lead our DEIJ, what I call DEIJ, I put justice in there, as we're trying to imagine a new kind of DEIJ. What does it really mean? What does it mean, and how does it feel? And how do we build a truly inclusive environment? So I think, first of all, I think staff also have incredible ideas on what we should be doing in terms of studying and nurturing. It's not just the academics who understand this. And so I want them to be deeply involved in this. But I also want the staff to be deeply involved in building this culture, because we need to build an inclusive culture. If there is anything that this year has taught us, it is that our culture is not as inclusive as it could be and should be, and society will break if we don't make it more inclusive. So I really, and for me, inclusivity also involves role. I don't like this distinction of faculty and staff. I've been in the private sector for 23 years where it just did not exist. It just didn't exist. A new staff member coming in could be CEO 40 years from now, 20 years from now, not 40, 20 years from now, and the CEO is younger than me, and he kind of came in as a staff person, and, and he came up. And so I think that we will just do so much better at trying to have societal impact if we hear all voices. How do we build something for society if we only build it in a select tier of society? That makes no sense.
So I'm curious, you said you were, you taught at UCLA and you were at Microsoft, but UCLA, great school, not Berkeley, for better or for worse, maybe. So I'm wondering, what surprised you? What, if anything, surprised you about Berkeley, pleasantly or otherwise?
It's true that we have faculty governance here on a different level than UCLA has it. So I was kind of forewarned about that, and that's fine. I think if we really have the best dialogues, we do come to something better. But the thing that surprised me most was the incredible social commitment of faculty, staff, and students. It is just, people here just build things. They just roll up their sleeves and build things. It's funny. Before I got here, even before I was considering this job, I was telling some of my ex-students who were MIT faculty, one of my labs sat right next to MIT, so I would advise them all the time. I was telling them about our data science major. And they said, how did Berkeley do that? That we thought Berkeley didn't have money. And I said, well, it's not financial capital they used, which is what MIT was thinking of using. It's human capital. It was faculty, students, and staff, all three, that jumped in and created this major. We now have over 1,000 majors. It's just existed for 2.5 years. 6,000 students a year take a data science class at Berkeley. This was created with the vision and the blood, sweat, and tears of our faculty, our staff, and our students. And still, our students are teachers in it. We have many staff running it. And so that is what's truly amazing about Berkeley. And that's what gives me really deep confidence that we will build these things, because people here get behind what you're doing, not just with their voices, but with their elbow grease.
So I think we have time for one more question. It's been a fascinating conversation. Where do you hope we are? Where do you want to be in 5 years? In other words, in terms of how our whole data science, computing enterprise, and all the things you've been talking about, if all your dreams come true, what's it going to look like 5 years from now?
Well, I think at Berkeley, we're going to have just many, many more disciplines interacting with each other. I mean, I will feel like a failure if we don't have joint faculty with every division and school and college on campus. Okay, I will feel like I have failed if we don't have joint faculty, because I think that all voices have to be here. Everyone has to be at the table for this to be a success. I think we will have also, really helped to create new fields like public interest technology. I think our data scientists will, the kids who are graduating now, will be already the up and coming leaders in government, in industry, not just in the tech industry, but in the biomedical industry and the energy industry, that they will be leading social welfare reform and social justice reform. So our students will be out there, but we won't have limited it just to Berkeley. We will be a model, and other universities will look at what we're doing and say, we have to do that too.
Jennifer, I want to thank you for your time. It's thrilling to hear about what you're doing, what you're planning, what you're thinking and dreaming about, and the community of faculty, staff, and students you're bringing along with you. Great for the university, and I think great for society. I want to thank everybody who tuned in to join us today. Stay safe and be well in the days ahead, and look forward to seeing you for the next campus conversations. Thanks again, Jennifer.
Thanks, everyone.